Hi everyone. So in this video, I'm going to discuss how the boomers and the Gen X, how they use the birth control to destroy the next generation. By the next generation, I mean the millennials and the Gen Z. Well, you think that sounds extremely absurd, right? But that is actually exactly what happened. First of all, let's start with this graph. You notice something extremely absurd, right? So back in 1960, Canada's fertility rate was hanging right around the 3.7, 3.8. So close to 4 children per family, okay? I want you to keep in mind. Now you see that dramatic steep drop. Today, Canada's fertility rate is 1.33 children per family. Okay, the replacement rate is 2.11. Okay, so look at where the birth rates started to drop. In 1962, birth control became widely available to all Canadian citizens for free. And look at what happened. Canada had a new age with the start of the rise of the Dinks. There's a new term for it. Dinks stands for dual income, no children. And remember, this is way back, okay? This is when the marriages were relatively stable for the most part. This is before the divorce rate started skyrocketing, before relationships became toxic, when most people were happy in their relationships. However, I've met many of these Canadian people, especially elderly couple with no children, right? And it's not due to infertility, right? The man's happy in the relationship, the woman's happy in the relationship, they have no problems. They have a nice house, they got a garage, they got nice cars, but they decided to just not have any children. They get a couple of cats, they get a couple of dogs. However, this causes a massive problem in our economy. Okay, look at this chart. This is Canada's aging population. And remember, healthcare, even though it's free in Canada, there's a cost for everything. Do you know why the healthcare is free? Because Canada taxed the shit out of you, right? And the Justin Trudeau has added a new carbon tax that's destroying everybody's lives. You get taxed on every single thing in life. So as Canada's population ages, as these boomers, and this population is getting older and older, and look at how much money you have to spend on healthcare as you get older. You see the dramatic increase when you hit 70 and when you hit 80. Where do you think the government is going to get this money? They're going to tax the shit out of the current working age population because that is the only option. They don't have a choice. And have a look at this graph. For everybody, for all the seniors, okay, out there saying that your generation have it so easy. Listen, every single one of them is full of shit, okay? I can tell you that 100%. See, back in 1950, for every pensioner, every person that's retired in Canada, there were 7 people that was working, that were paying taxes, that were contributing to this person's pension. Guess what that number is today in 2024? You have 2.4 workers paying for one retiree, okay? That means that you're taxed 3 times more heavily versus back in 1950. And this is part of the reason why Canada is so desperate for immigrants and refugees, which, by the way, I'm 100% against. Yes, I support legal immigration. However, we need very young, skilled immigrants. We don't need to be taking any refugees. And also, we don't need any more seniors coming into this country because Canada is aging so rapidly. So I'll give you an example, even though I don't talk to my dad anymore. So this is many years ago. So one of his close friends in Canada. So he was able to bring his mother over, and she was already retired in China. She was in her 70s. And Canada has a system. If you become a permanent resident, and after you lived in Canada for over 5 years, you're eligible to get some form of old age security. And this is a long time ago, maybe 10, 12, 15 years ago. She was collecting $1,200 Canadian a month, doing absolutely all. So why are we inviting these kind of immigrants to our country? Because everyone we invite, every one of these people from China, from India, from the Philippines, from Egypt, from Nigeria, okay, you invite a bunch of old pensioners that has nothing to do with Canada. They have contributed nothing to society, and that they can literally just stay for 5 years and start collecting some kind of pension or social security. And where do you think that money is going to come from? It's our taxpayers' monies. And these plans are absolutely destroying this country. Here's the issue, okay, what happens when you go from, let's say, 4 children down to 1 children per family, okay? It's not just the shrinking of the workforce. And for people out there saying that, okay, if the workforce is shrinking, if there's less youths, we can just use robots, we can use self-checkouts. Do those robots pay taxes? That's what Japan's doing right now. And their GDP is shrinking rapidly, right? Japan's population is shrinking by over 1 million people per year now. The average age in Japan is 48.5 now, and over 30% of the country are seniors now. Once you see restaurants and warehouses start using robots as servers, that's a sign of a dying society, because those robots, those self-checkout counters, those kiosks, everything you see at McDonald's, none of them pay taxes. all of the pressure on the actual humans who are working in person, who are paying the taxes. I'll give you another example. Let's say if you live in a small town in Canada, you own a family restaurant, right? Let's say the town has 10,000 people and you have a booming business. You open up this restaurant, you serve 200 people a day. And the money you make from this restaurant that bought you a house, that got you a nice car, you're able to purchase a yacht, a cottage, and you're able to send your kids off to college with the money you make. Now what happens? So every single couple only has one children. A generation from now, 30, 40, 50 years from now, instead of 200 people going to a restaurant every single day, going to be 100 people going to a restaurant. Now guess what? You can't even break even. You go into debt and your business is going to go bankrupt. That's how simple it is. That's why Canada is so desperate to bring immigrants in. In 2023, Canada brought in a record number of 700,000 people. Yes, 700,000 people in a country of 38 million became permanent residents. And I think that is getting absolutely out of control because Canada has a huge housing crisis. So where are these people going to live, right? And how are you going to find jobs for these people, right? Houses and rents are getting so expensive, and bringing this number of immigrants is only going to make things worse. My dad, he came to Canada with my stepmom back in 2002 as immigrants. At first, the cash was a little bit tight. Also, they weren't sure if they were going to settle in Canada because they were new, right? So they waited a couple of years. In 2005, they bought a house in Canada for $160,000, okay? So in US dollars, that's what, 110, 120,000? I know this was back in 2005, but still, 160K. I tried to go find that today. So at my previous job, and one of the guys I worked with at my co-op company, so he bought his house. Well, I have to make it clear, he did go to a very, very small village. He lives in a hamlet of 1,000 people. Obviously, when you go to a small place, things are generally cheaper. But hear this, he bought a single detached home with a garage in 2006 in a small town. It's called Seaforth. If you think I'm making this up, you can search it up. This town does exist. He bought it in 2006 for $140,000. 140,000 Canadian dollars. In US dollars, I think that's roughly what, 103,000, just over 100 grand. Okay, and guess what? Back then, they still allowed a 5% down payment. They don't allow that today. Anywhere, any bank you go to in Canada is minimum 20%. So his down payment for a single detached home with a garage was $7,000. And back then, people can still get eligible for up to a 40-year mortgage. That no longer exists in Canada. The maximum you can get for your mortgage, it's 25 years. So he was able to get a 40-year mortgage with a down payment of $7,000. Guess what his monthly payment is? $290 per month for a mortgage payment. So back then, people had it way easier in this generation. For any seniors that tell you that, show them these charts and graphs. They're so full of shit. All of the pressures on this generation, because for the government to come up with the money to take care of these seniors, to pay their pension, to take care of their health care, the only option they have is to tax the shit out of the current working age population. And perhaps I want to end the video on this note. You know, birth controls had to happen, right? And when birth controls became available in the West in 1960s, China quickly adopted this. In the early 70s, China started with the two-child policy. That soon became the one-child policy. But if the one-child policy, then the two-child policy never happened, if birth controls were never invented, let's say in modern China, if there was 2 billion, 2.5 billion, 3 billion people, can China handle it? I highly doubt it. There's only so much resource on Earth that's available. You can only feed so many people at once before everything runs out. And it's the same thing in Western society, right? If birth control never happened, do you think the Earth can handle, what, 20 billion people? 25, 30 billion people? So perhaps this is the great filter. And I'm sure you guys have seen many of those scientific videos. They talk about if there's aliens, how come they haven't visited us? So I think it's very possible that in the observable universe, perhaps this is one of the laws of nature. So when a civilization gets so advanced to a certain point, they meet this great filter. Maybe if you believe in upper power, I don't have a religion. If you believe in Jesus, if you believe in God, if you believe in the Allah, if you believe in the Buddha, perhaps they put this filter in place so that all civilizations will eventually stop at this stage. And perhaps the invention of birth controls, that's the great filter for humanity. And perhaps it is because of this filter, we are not able to become a spacefaring interstellar species. Because whether you like it or not, the population collapse is coming. And I'm sorry to everyone out there, but as the years go by, you will be forced to pay more and more on taxes. The government will be forced to tax you on everything. And this is going to lead to a disaster.